Hello everyone, my name is Sammy Flair and welcome to the 2023-2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. We didn't have a couple of matchups solidified until this very night, the final night of the season, but we have our playoff matchup set. This is the playoff predictor for this postseason. Let's go ahead and begin with the Florida Panthers, the number one seed in the Atlantic, taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning, the number one wildcard team. This is the third time that the Lightning and the Panthers have squared off in the playoffs. The Lightning won both of those series 4-2 and 4-0. If you want to see me discuss that one in more depth, then in one of these corners or somewhere on the screen right now, you're going to see a card to my series preview for that series specifically. But here are the high points that you need to know about this series. You have an offensive juggernaut in the Tampa Bay Lightning, a top 5 goal scoring team, the top power play team, the Art Ross winning Nikita Kucherov putting up 144 points with 100 assists, only the 5th player in NHL history to do so. Against them, you have easily one of the best defensive teams in the league in the Florida Panthers. Only allowed 200 goals, that is only one behind the number one team in the Winnipeg Jets. A stout penalty kill, incredible goaltending this season. What do you do in this not really a David and Goliath matchup, because they're actually a lot more evenly matched than you would think. The Tampa Bay Lightning have the playoff experience and they have the playoff pedigree. They've been here before, they won cups, they know what to do. The Florida Panthers, on the other end, they made a deep run last year and they are a incredibly physical team that knows the style of hockey that needs to be played in these playoffs to have success, basically meaning their whole goal is to punch you in the mouth until you don't feel like getting punched in the mouth anymore. And when you no longer feel like getting punched in the mouth anymore and you feel like flinching instead, they're going to go ahead and score 6 goals on you. And I noted in that series preview video that my questions for each team are basically Florida Panthers, was last year a flash in the pan or is this who you really are? Tampa Bay Lightning, how much more do you have in the tank? And can this core continue to seem ageless and continue to make deep runs here, especially when Andrei Vasilevskiy is getting hot at the right time? As much of a cop-out as it is, I genuinely think the series gets down to who the better goaltender is, because you might need them to be the best for one game in Game 7. And the NHL player poll said that they would prefer to have Andrei Vasilevskiy be their goalie if they needed to win one game. I see no reason that I would disagree with that. For this series, I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Lightning to win in 7 grueling games. Call me a homer if you want, but this is my real feelings. I also feel like Panthers could win it in 7 or 6 games as well, but I'm sticking with the Tampa Bay Lightning to win in 7. Sticking in the Atlantic, you have the Boston Bruins, the number 2 seed in the Atlantic, taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs, the number 3 seed in the Atlantic. Let's set the stage here, okay? The Boston Bruins are the boogeyman for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They are the Baba Yaga. They are the John Wick of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let's keep in mind, the last time the Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Boston Bruins in the playoffs was 1959. That is 65 years ago. That is the entire lifetime of Weird Al Yankovic. And now I feel old and sad because I just realized that Weird Al is 65 years old. The Leafs took a big step forward last year. They won their first playoff series in 20 years, since 2004, by beating the Tampa Bay Lightning and then subsequently getting crushed by the Florida Panthers in round 2. So it only makes sense that the measure of success for them is no longer 1 round, but it's 2 rounds now. And how fitting it is that they would have to go through their most hated rival and their boogeyman in the Boston Bruins. Let's put it this way, you can call it the stars aligning, you can call it the script writers, or you can call it that the Boston Bruins knew who they wanted to play. Boston lost their final 3 games of the season. It was looking like a 99% chance that the matchups were going to be Boston and Tampa and Florida and Toronto. And Boston just said, oh no, we're losing games. Who do we have to play? The Maple Leafs. Oh no! In some aspect, it's a similar matchup to the Tampa and Florida series. Toronto is incredibly talented on offense. They are clearly the better team on offense. Boston is clearly the better team on defense, especially when it comes to goaltending. But here's kind of the kicker for me in this Boston and Toronto series. They played 4 games against each other this year. Boston won all 4 of them. And look at these particular stats that Sportsnet decided to throw up here. In those 4 games, goals Boston 14, Toronto 7. The power play, Boston 30%, Toronto 9.1%. Save percentage, Boston 9.49, Toronto 8.91. At the end of the day, Boston is going to regress at some point. They cannot keep this up forever. I just don't know when that is. They continue to be this ageless wonder. And on the other end of the ice, it's the Leafs. And the Leafs are still the Leafs. I think I have to take Boston. I'm going to take Boston in 6 games this year. Let's stay in the Eastern Conference and hop over on into the Metro Division for what is going to be the easiest pick of this first round. You have the President's winning New York Rangers taking on the barely clinched the playoffs number 2 wild card Washington Capitals. And based on that quick introduction, if you can't already tell who I'm going to pick in this series, then you might need to work on reading the room just a little bit. Let's just call this what it is. The New York Rangers are clearly the better team in this series. They are a top 10 offensive team. They are a top 10 defensive team. They have one of the best goaltenders in the league. I actually just looked at this. I couldn't believe it. Artemi Panarin got 120 points this year. That is the quietest 120 points that I've ever seen in my life. Probably because you had that ridiculous race at the top between Kucherov, McKinnon, and McDavid. He was 1 goal short of 50. He got 49 this season. The Washington Capitals, on the other hand, well, stink. They barely snuck into the playoffs because Detroit and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh all just collectively decided they didn't want to win enough games to actually get into these playoffs. So the default option was Washington. Oh, and by the way, the Washington Capitals make the playoffs with a goal differential of -37. Look, I know Alex Ovechkin is eventually going to break Wayne Gretzky's record. At 38 years old, he shouldn't be your number 1 goal scorer and your number 2 point scorer for the season. If the Capitals are going to have a chance at this series, they need Charlie Lindgren, their goalie, to steal probably 2 games. I just don't see it happening otherwise. It was a nice feel-good push for the Capitals to make the postseason this year and to give Alex Ovechkin another 4 games to put up a couple goals and get closer to Gretzky's record. But let's be honest, the Capitals train ends here. Give me the New York Rangers in 5 games. Sticking in the Metro, you had the Carolina Hurricanes, the number 2 seed, taking on the New York Islanders in the number 3 seed. And while I think the series is slightly more difficult to pick, it's still fairly obvious to me who's going to come away with the win here. Carolina finished just 3 points behind the Rangers for the President's Trophy, and doing so with arguably a better I don't even think it's arguably. I think the Carolina Hurricanes have a better defense than they do year in and year out. But the question for the Hurricanes every single postseason is goaltending, goaltending, goaltending. It always is, and it always seems to let them down. Is it going to happen again? Freddie Anderson is back from a blood clotting issue after missing basically 4 months of the season, and he's looked really good since coming back. Backup Pyotr Kochetkov looks like he could carry the load if he needs to. That is not at all to say that it's going to be an easy series because they're playing the Islanders, and I'm not convinced that anybody actually ever has fun playing against the Islanders. The Islanders historically have just been a park the bus kind of team. They hit you, they make playing against them just a physical nightmare. It's not fun. But where they differ from years past is somehow the New York Islanders have the league's worst penalty kill this season. Tell me how that happens. By comparison, the Carolina Hurricanes have the 2nd best power play and the best penalty kill. The Islanders are the only other team to make the postseason this year with a negative goal differential at -17. Again, it's going to get down to goaltending. Semyon Varlamov and Ilya Sorokin will have to save this team, and they'll have to steal a few games, but I mean, neither of them have been at the top of their game this season either. I'll give the Islanders like 5% more credit than I gave the Capitals, but I still think that the Hurricanes end up running away with this series. I'll give the Islanders 1 extra game. Give me Hurricanes in 6. Moving on over to the Western Conference. Let's start with the Pacific, and let's start with your Pacific Division champion, Vancouver Canucks, coming out of nowhere this season, taking on the wild card number 1 team, Nashville Predators. Let me first just call out the Nashville Predators for just being an absolute wagon for the final 30 games of the season. There was a stretch where they won 17 of 19 games, and it catapulted them into a playoff position. And it was nice to see UC Saros finally turn his game around. He ended up winning 35 games this year, which was unthinkable based on how the Nashville Predators were playing through the month of December. And it's also really heartwarming to see Philip Forsberg have a resurgence and Roman Josi quietly having a Norris caliber season. And whereas the Predators were a wagon for their final 30 games of the season, the Canucks were a wagon for all 82 games of their season. Keep in mind, this is the same Canucks team that finished with 83 points last season and missed the playoffs by a substantial margin. They won 38 games last year. They won 50 this season. Last season, goal differential, minus 22. This season, goal differential, plus 56. Basically what I'm trying to say is that the Vancouver Canucks of this season are the New Jersey Devils of last season. And in that same vein, it's a little concerning for me how quickly they turned it around and how much of a wagon they've been this season. But here's where I start to lose some friends for this video, because I honestly do not think that the Vancouver Canucks make it out of round one. I think Nashville is too hot right now, and even though they don't have a ton more experience, they have enough playoff experience that I think will push them through, and I think UC Saros is getting hot at the right time. I don't think anybody in the West wants to play the Nashville Predators right now. I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm going to take the Nashville Predators in 6 games to beat Vancouver. Let's stay in the Pacific and take a look at the Edmonton Oilers, the number 2 seed, hosting the Los Angeles Kings for what seems like the 50th season in a row. And the thing is, at the end of December, it didn't look like this matchup was plausible at all, mostly because LA was running away with things. They looked like they were going to win the Pacific Division, and Edmonton was floundering. They were so far back of a playoff position that people were writing them off already, self-included. But lo and behold, Connor McDavid is inevitable, and the Oilers are back. Just like the 2 series over in the Atlantic, this is another offensive juggernaut versus defensive juggernaut type of series. The Edmonton Oilers, the 4th best offense in the league, the 4th best power play in the league. The Los Angeles Kings, the 3rd best defensive team in the league, the 2nd best penalty kill in the league. I think Los Angeles has done an incredible job of putting pieces together, and they're going to be regular appearances at the playoffs for the foreseeable future. But for right now, Edmonton is just way too scary. Give me the Oilers in, I want to say 5, but I'm going to say 6 games to be safe. Edmonton in 6. Over in the Central, you have the Western Conference champion Dallas Stars taking on the number 2 wildcard Vegas Golden Knights. The same Vegas Golden Knights team that is only $8.7 million over the cap. Look, as unsavory as cap circumvention is, it's all still perfectly legal, and it's just one of the many tools that Vegas has in its toolbox, and it's part of why they have been so successful. But you balance that out with the Dallas Stars team that is quietly, by the way, a top 10 defensive team that is succeeding, that won the Western Conference in spite of their goaltending instead of because of it. I love me some Jake Oettinger. I truly do. He was on several of my fantasy teams this season, but he posted a .905 save percentage this season. It's clearly not his best, far and away from what we originally saw in that first playoff showing against the Calgary Flames, where he kept the Stars in that series the whole way. Somehow, the Dallas Stars are the number 3 scoring team in the NHL. A lot of teams have superstars that are putting up 40, 50, 60, 69 goals this season, and then there's a huge drop-off. The Dallas Stars are so much more tightly compact. Listen to this goal scorer list. Wyatt Johnston, 32. Roope Hintz, 30. Jason Robertson, 29. Joe Pavelski, 27. Matt Duchene, 25. Tyler Seguin, 25. Mason Marchment, 22. Jamie Benn, 21. You have 8 players with better than 20 goals this season. I've gone on and on about the Tampa Bay Lightning and how good they are. They don't even have that. A top 3 offense and a top 8 defense seems like a no-brainer. Like you'd have to be stupid to not pick that team, right? There is this doubt lodged inside my brain, and I cannot get rid of it, that says Vegas is not as bad as they appear. Couple that with the fact that Vegas actually swept the Dallas Stars in 3 games during the regular season, and this is uncomfortable. I don't like being here. In spite of all of that, I think I'm still going to take the Dallas Stars here. I think they have successfully weaponized this sneakiness and this depth scoring across the board, and I'm willing to write off the 3-game series sweep because they all happened before December. 2 of those games were within 1 goal. This one could easily come back to bite me, but give me the Dallas Stars in 7 games. Yeah, Dallas in 7. Our last series in the Central, it's the Winnipeg Jets, the number 2 seed, taking on the Colorado Avalanche, the 3 seed. These two teams have been neck and neck all season long. It's been really hard to distinguish which one of them is better because they've done it in drastically different ways. Winnipeg Jets have capitalized on lockdown defense and, in my mind, the best goalie tandem in the league right now in Connor Hellebuck and Laurent Brossoit. Do you like my French accent there? Don't want to brag, but I spent 2 days in Quebec. The Colorado Avalanche, on the other hand, have done it with high-powered offense. What else is new? Because Nathan MacKinnon was constantly in contention for the Art Ross Trophy and still is very much in contention for the Hart Trophy. However, the Colorado Avalanche have been reeling at the wrong time and the Jets have been surging at the right time. Winnipeg finished on an 8-game winning streak to leapfrog Colorado and take that number 2 seed and get that home ice advantage, whereas Colorado lost 5 of their last 8. Conversely, the Winnipeg Jets just always seem to get the yips in the playoffs, and I don't understand it because they're way too talented to do so. In their past 5 trips to the Stanley Cup playoffs, they have won a grand total of 3 rounds. But the season series has been markedly in favor of the Winnipeg Jets. They've won all 3 games, 4-2, 6-2, and 7-0. That 7-0 win, by the way, came in game 80 just a few days ago. And I think the home ice advantage will definitely play in favor of Winnipeg. They really want to have that home ice advantage because Colorado is an absolute wagon at home. They went 31-9-1 at home this season, but on the road, they were 19-16-6. And again, if you take away the Bettman math of that, then in reality, they were 19-22 on the road. Colorado is still as talented as they have ever been, and they definitely have the potential to make a deep run here. But this is going to be one of those times where I just have to look at the very recent history and say, I think Colorado is running out of gas finally, but Winnipeg is turning it on at the right time. That's not to say that I think Winnipeg is going to go terribly deep in these playoffs, but at least for this round, I think Winnipeg has this, and I think Winnipeg has it convincingly. Give me the Winnipeg Jets to win this series in, I'm going to say it, 5 games. All right, first round's out of the way. Let's say, should we keep on going? Let's keep on going. Let's go all the way till we pick a winner here. Back to the East, we have the Boston Bruins hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning. Both teams getting out of a grueling first round matchup. And quite frankly, this was the first round matchup that I personally wanted because I think that Tampa matches up better to Boston than they do Florida. By way of pure matchup, I think everything that I said positive about the Leafs playing against the Bruins, I could also say about the Lightning playing the Bruins. But I don't think the same can be said about the negative parts about the Leafs, and that's why I think that Tampa just matches up a little bit better. It's true, I still think Boston is a better defensive team than Tampa, but not by the wide margin that I think Boston is better than Toronto. And you're replacing a boogeyman factor game with a hated rival factor of game, and that takes on such a different mentality for both teams because at this point, Tampa doesn't really have anything to prove against Boston. They have already done so. Boston is still trying to recover from that, let's be honest, embarrassing loss that they had last season against the Panthers. That most likely plays in their favor. I think it gives them that extra push of motivation, but at the end of the day, you have 2 aging cores here who are so desperately trying to grasp onto that last little bit of life and grab one more cup for whatever player it is that they have in mind, be it for Stamkos and Hedman on the Tampa Bay Lightning side, or be it for Marchand on the Boston side. They both want it, but who has enough in the tank at this point? I was actually in Boston a couple of days ago on this business trip, and my client, big Boston Bruins fan, he was very frank with me about it, and he said, I would not want to play the Tampa Bay Lightning because we don't match up well against them, and this Boston Bruins team isn't really built for long-term success in the playoffs. And as much as I wanted to appease him because he's my client and I want him to give us money, I actually do kind of agree with him on that. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games over the Boston Bruins. Down in the Metro, the New York Rangers hosting the Carolina Hurricanes, and oh boy, if there's a marquee matchup in the second round, this is it. Without getting too far ahead of myself, I don't think it's a stretch to say that whoever wins this game is representing the East in the Stanley Cup final. And it will inevitably be a massive success for whichever team happens to do it, because both of them have had troubles getting past the second round, and the Rangers have had trouble getting past the conference championship in years past, thanks to the Tampa Bay Lightning. What sticks out to me in this season series is that 2 of the 3 games were incredibly close. They were 1-goal games. So the one that the Carolina Hurricanes won was an absolute blowout, which admittedly they do have a tendency to do every once in a while. And as I noted in a previous series, it doesn't matter if you win by 6 goals or you win by 1 goal. A win is a win. You need 4 of them to win the round. And it's not even like there is a solid metric where I can say one of these teams is significantly better than the other, because across the board, offense, defense, special teams, they're neck and neck basically the whole way. This could be a coin flip. It could be the matter of 1 goal goes one way instead of the other, and that decides the entire series. For my money right now, I am more sold on the New York Rangers to take this because I think they have fewer concerns in net right now. Again, Carolina's kind of boogeyman, their hump that they need to get over is goaltending in the playoffs. I don't think the Rangers have that problem. Give me the Rangers in 7 games on to the Eastern Conference Final. In the Central, you have the Dallas Stars hosting the Winnipeg Jets in the second round, and this one actually does kind of go the opposite direction in my mind, because there are metrics to where I could say one team is significantly better than the other in a couple of categories. I cannot get over this idea that the Dallas Stars are an offensive powerhouse. I haven't seen it in ages. And then conversely, Winnipeg is exactly where I expect them to be on the defensive side, having the best defense in my mind, and I maintain, and I will get off of this eventually, the best goalie tandem in the league. This is another situation where I'm going to wonder, how much does playoff experience play a role in this, right? I've already been through this idea that Winnipeg has the yips when it comes to the playoffs, particularly in the later rounds. Dallas, in very recent memory, has been to the Stanley Cup final. Last year, they went to the Western Conference Final. This rebranded version of the Dallas Stars intrigues me so much, and as much as I have love for goalies in general, and Connor Hellebuck specifically, I can't get over this idea that they're just gonna blow it again. Winnipeg needs to prove it to me before I am ready to pick them for a deep playoff run. Give me the Dallas Stars in 6 games. And over in the Pacific, you have a meeting of the Edmonton Oilers hosting the Nashville Predators, fresh off of an upset of the Vancouver Canucks. I'm sorry, my Canucks friends, I genuinely am. This one is a lot more lopsided in my mind. Basically, what a lot of people foresee happening to the Predators in the first round against the Canucks, I am pretty certain is going to happen in the second round against the Oilers. And it's funny that I'm coming to this conclusion about the Oilers right after I talk about the Winnipeg Jets needing to prove it to me, because, let's be honest, the Oilers haven't proved anything to me either. I have to figure that eventually Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are going to do enough to push this team through, to will them, to throw them on their back and will them to a Stanley Cup final, if not a Stanley Cup. If the Nashville Predators are indeed the Cinderella story of these playoffs, then I think the proverbial pumpkin comes around in the second round. I just can't see Nashville getting any sort of traction against this Edmonton Oilers team right now. Give me Edmonton in I genuinely think 5, but I'm going to say 6. No, I'm going to say 5, but none of this matters. Edmonton in 5. Which leads us now to the conference finals, and we will start in the East. And I'll be perfectly honest, when I started this video, I did not anticipate picking the Tampa Bay Lightning to be in the Eastern Conference Final. I did kind of anticipate the New York Rangers being there, but that is your Eastern Conference Final. How does this one break down? Last 2 times that the Rangers have been to the Eastern Conference Finals, in 2015 and in 2022, they met the Tampa Bay Lightning and they lost both times. This season, however, has told us a very different story about the dynamic between these 2 teams. The Rangers have been the better team. They've won 2 of the 3 matchups from this season. That 3rd game, however, that 6-3 win for the Lightning, came back in March, right in the middle of a Lightning surge towards the end of this season. And it communicates to me that on any given day, they can go toe-to-toe with the Rangers. The real question is, can they do it for a 4 to 7 game series? Oof, I don't know at this point. On offense, the margin is just razor thin. Over 82 games, the Lightning outscored the Rangers by a total of 10 goals, but it's the defense where the kicker is really going to be here. New York is legitimately a top 10 defense. Their saving grace, if there is any for the Lightning, is going to be special teams. Their power play, it's out of this world, we know this, but their penalty kill will have to step up even more than it has. I unfortunately think that this is where the story ends for the Lightning this season. I think the New York Rangers are too good, and they're going to earn themselves a spot in the Stanley Cup final. Give me the New York Rangers in 6 games. Over in the West, an unexpected offensive shootout between the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers. This might be the most fascinating potential matchup in the entirety of these playoffs because there is no real differentiation in my mind between these two teams. And that feels so weird to say, again, talking about the Dallas Stars and a team that has, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and 50 goal scorer Zach Hyman. And it's because of this that I'm sitting here thinking, how am I going to make this decision? If I can't find anything that is making that big of a difference, I'm gonna have to rely on my gut. There was only one other stat that I found that might tell how this series is won or lost. That stat, believe it or not, is hits. I genuinely cannot believe I'm saying this, but the Edmonton Oilers are a more physical hitting team at 1,854 hits versus the Dallas Stars 1,458. The math basically works out to the Edmonton Oilers will lay 5 more hits per game than the Dallas Stars do, and while that doesn't sound like a lot, 5 more hits, you knock the right person off of the puck, you generate a turnover, you generate an odd man rush the other direction, and that one goal makes the difference in the game. All of a sudden that hitting stat actually seems like it makes a big difference. If we are indeed lucky enough to get this series, it's going to be exciting no matter what direction it goes, but just based on what I'm sitting and processing right now, I think I have to give the slightest of edge to the Edmonton Oilers. So Connor McDavid, welcome to the Stanley Cup final. Edmonton in 7 games. 7 close games, by the way. Which means your Stanley Cup final for this season is the New York Rangers and the Edmonton Oilers. And if we do indeed get this matchup for the Stanley Cup final, it means that no matter who wins, it will be the first time in 30 years or more that their franchise has won a Stanley Cup. The New York Rangers being in 1994, the Edmonton Oilers being in 1990. The extra bit of motivation for the Edmonton Oilers is they could be the first Canadian team in over 30 years to win a Stanley Cup, the last being the Montreal Canadiens back in 1993. Look, all other things considered, assuming that everybody stays healthy throughout these playoffs, this screams of a series to me that will get down to goaltending. And the fact of the matter is that Igor Shesterkin is a better goaltender than Stuart Skinner. I would take him every single time. That basically means that I'm giving the Rangers a leg up already, so Stuart Skinner would have to be able to steal 1 or 2 games to get back in the conversation here. I do genuinely wonder how I would feel about this matchup if the Edmonton Oilers had been hot all season, because let's not forget that the first 18 games they had 11 points. It looked like they were dead in the water. The first 18 games, the New York Rangers had 29 points. They were 18 points better only 18 games into the season. Both teams had a period of the season where they floundered a bit. It just so happens that the Edmonton Oilers got theirs out of the way in the first 18 games, and the Rangers waited until about mid-season to just be kind of meh. And even despite their meh period, the New York Rangers spent a grand total of 6 games not in first place in the Metro this entire season. They've been consistently better from Game 1 to Game 82. The Edmonton Oilers have been consistently more impressive since Game 19 through Game 82. And if you're not sensing what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to talk myself into this idea that the New York Rangers are not going to win this series. Oddly enough, I feel so much more of this homer pull for the Oilers right now than it did for the Lightning playing against the Rangers. I think it's just because I really want Connor McDavid to get a Stanley Cup. Nothing about this series screams that there is a clear-cut favorite, again, outside of the goalie play. And I can't get over this idea that Igor Shesterkin will be an X factor in this series. As much as I really want Edmonton to win this series, as much as I really want the Oilers and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to get a Stanley Cup, everything in me is saying that I have to take the New York Rangers. And so with my head telling me to go with the Rangers, I guess I have to Screw it, I'm going with my heart. Edmonton Oilers in 7 games. Congrats, Connor McDavid. You got your Stanley Cup. Like I said, none of this matters. Don't come after me. Before we go, I asked 2 other questions to my Instagram community, and I want to feature some of my favorite answers here. So the first one was, who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup this season? And my favorite answer comes from my non-sports friend T, who says, some creep in the karate class who wants to sniff it all night. Thank you for your contribution, T. Among plenty of others, we have multiple votes for the Vancouver Canucks and for the New York Rangers, and a lone fan out there going for the Vegas Golden Knights. Is he a homer? Yes, he's a homer. You could have guessed that already. And lastly, I asked my community for some of their Stanley Cup playoff hot takes, and these were some of the responses. Player Malt, Canucks get close enough to taste it, but choke spectacularly. Claire clearly predicting a repeat of the 2011 Stanley Cup. Miss Georgia Brooks says, Toronto finally slays its demons and beats Boston, then loses in the second round. Death, taxes, the Cowboys, and the Maple Leafs doing absolutely nothing in the playoffs. And lastly, Yana Albright says, coldest take, Stanley Cup finally goes home to Edmonton. I can't even think of a joke for that right now. It's 2 in the morning. What am I still doing up? Why am I still recording this? I actually just, I agreed with her. Yes, Yana, it's going to Edmonton. Let's go Oilers! I really need to go to bed now. I have nothing else to say. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for giving me just a little bit of your time. I hope that you are looking forward to these playoffs as much as I am. If you want to see more content, I just got done recording a series preview for the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Florida Panthers. I also did an end of season recap for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I will be live streaming commentary for all the Tampa Bay Lightning playoff games over on my Twitch channel. That is twitch.tv/SammyFlair. Game 1 is this coming Sunday, April 21st. Oh, and make sure you leave me a comment and tell me how bad all of my predictions were. I thrive on your disapproval, viewer. Just know that if I got all this right, everybody out there owes me, let's say, $100. I think that's fair.